My daughter coaxed me into signing the papers. Later, I realized I had given her all my property. She chose a quiet Sunday afternoon with stew simmering and the house smelling of thyme. "It's just a formality, Mom," she said, placing the papers on my kitchen table. "A simple power of attorney. I can pay your bills if you're ever sick." She had already taped neon flags where she wanted my signature. She even brought her father's old fountain pen, the one I keep in an oak box. It was this that made my hand shake. "Why now?" I asked. "Because you don't have to worry about paperwork," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Please, Mom. Trust me, trust me." Two little words that made so many mistakes. I read the first page, then the second, and thought I understood. She touched my wrist. "You always took care of everyone," she whispered. "Let me take care of you." The pen was warm in my fingers. I signed. The next morning, my balance was much lower. I refreshed the screen twice, then again, as if the numbers would correct themselves. The transfers sounded like maintenance, consolidation, security, moved from my account to hers. Not a mistake. It had all been planned. I felt something fall through me like a rung on a ladder breaking. She answered on the second ring. "It's okay, Mom." I transferred a little money into my account to keep it safe. "You clicked on one of those scam links last month, remember?" Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "I'll handle this until this blows over." Until it all blows over? She thought I didn't know any better. She didn't understand anything. I sat there, completely still, thinking about how I raised a child, how I lived this life, and how, at the end of my years, my own family decided to deceive me. They forget what kind of girl I was. Before I was their mother, a woman who knew where every check was. She thought I was stupid. The thing about signatures is that they can be traps, but they can also be keys. She thought she had mine. She didn't know what else I had saved or who still answered my calls at the credit union. I learned to count at the butcher's when a dollar still bought 3 good chops. I balanced my first budget in pencil, my second with a baby in my arms. If life has given me anything, it's the habit of counting. Receipts, pills, blessings, the seconds between bad news and what you do next. My daughter, Marissa, grew up watching me make 10 stretch to 15. She watched, but she did not learn the same lesson. Or perhaps she learned a different one, that steadiness can be harvested by someone braver or meaner than you. The Sunday she came with the power of attorney papers, she cooked with me like old times. She chopped carrots, nibbled celery, hummed that song she loved from the 8th grade. I remember the smell of thyme, the soft pull of bread from the oven, the way the afternoon light milked across the table. She'd brought my late husband's fountain pen, the one I kept in an oak box under the folded flag from his service. The sight of it made my throat close like a fist. She knew it would. "Just to help if anything happens," she'd said. A simple power of attorney. I read the first page, the second, thought I understood, let the warmth of being needed do the rest. When I signed, she kissed my forehead. "Thank you," she murmured. I wanted to believe those words were clean. The next morning, my balance looked thinner. Transfers with polite names, maintenance, consolidation, safety had moved out of my account and into hers. I called. She answered on the second ring, voice gentle as lotion. "It's fine, Mom." I moved a little to keep it safe. "You clicked on one of those scam links last month, remember? I'll handle it until things settle down." Until things settle down. How could my own daughter decide my life needed settling like dust in a jar? I sat with the phone silent in my lap while the stew crackled against the lid. Then I did what numbers women do. I made a list, call the credit union, print statements, read the papers I signed, slowly, out loud, like a poem you don't trust. Check the oak box, call someone who knows more than me, and then act like I've always known it. Mr. Alvarez had opened my first savings account when Marissa still had bangs. He recognized my voice. "Elaine," he said, as if decades could be folded and put back in a drawer. "What can I do for you?" "I need to know exactly what changed when I signed a power of attorney," I said. And I need to know who's been asking questions about my accounts. He cleared his throat. I can't disclose certain inquiries without proper authorization. I may have given too much authorization, I said. Let's assume I'm calling to put toothpaste back in a tube. Silence. Then the professional shift. I can schedule you for a review. In person is best. In person, then, I said. Tomorrow. I hung up and went to the oak box. The fountain pen was there, capped, a tiny smear of time on the barrel from Sunday's cooking. Under it lay the copy of the power of attorney packet Marissa had insisted I keep. I read it standing up at the counter because sitting felt too trusting. I had given her broad powers, banking, real estate, medical, durable, effective upon signing. I had not marked the limited boxes. I had not struck the lines that should never be left blank. A notary seal winked up like a wink in a bad joke. I thought of the day she brought home a stray dog when she was 12 and how she swore she'd feed it, train it, clean the mess. I did the feeding, I did the training, I cleaned the mess. She learned then that a pen can be a leash. By the time I reached the last page, my chest hurt. I set the papers down and put a palm to my sternum until my heartbeat slowed. I brewed tea, though it tasted like dust. Then I pulled the printer from its shelf and printed every statement for the last 6 months, even the ones I already knew by heart. Numbers are a photograph of your life when you aren't paying attention. They tell you who you've been. The pattern was tidy, small transfers at first, then larger, notes that sounded like errands. One recurring recipient matched the name of Marissa's salon, which I knew was struggling after the city tore up the street for repairs. Another looked like a clinic. A third was a lender I didn't recognize, something with a brave name, Pinnacle Capital. I called the number on the Pinnacle line item and got a voicemail tree with more branches than a winter oak. I hung up. The next call I made was to Dr. Yuen, my primary care physician. Elaine, she said. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did you write any letters about my capacity? And I asked Swati anything that would be shown to a banker or a court. No, she said, careful now. And I wouldn't without an evaluation and your consent. Good, I said. If anyone asks, I want you to say exactly that. Has someone been asking? Not yet, I said, lying neatly to someone I trusted because sometimes that's what the situation requires. I'll see you soon. I found Ms. Patel, a lawyer whose ad was the opposite of flashy. A line in the church bulletin, a workshop at the senior center titled, in plain letters, Planning Ahead. Her receptionist told me she could see me on Wednesday. I said I would be there early and brought the folder with the notary seal winking like a bad joke. You gave your daughter a durable power of attorney, Ms. Patel said, reading with a finger that never slowed. Effective immediately. No co-agent, no springing condition. And you didn't limit gift-giving authority. She looked up, her eyes steady. That allows her to move money, possibly even to herself. She's already started, I said. Is there a way to stop her? There are ways to revoke, replace, and notify, she said. But this is also about facts and proof. Do you have documentation of the transfers? I brought everything, I said, and slid the stack forward. She sorted, marking with cheerful paper flags. We'll draft a revocation. You'll sign a new limited power naming a neutral fiduciary, perhaps our firm for the interim, or we can leave it blank and rely on your competence, which seems intact. Intact enough to bake a stew and read my own mail? I said. She smiled. We'll prepare letters to your bank and credit union. We'll also notify your daughter in writing that her authority is revoked. We'll include a demand for accounting. If she resists, we escalate. Escalate how? We go to court for an injunction, she said, voice even. And if there's fraud, we involve law enforcement. The words should have been cold. They warmed me. It wasn't revenge yet. It was something sturdier, a path. On the way home, I stopped at the library. I printed an extra copy of every monthly statement, every withdrawal slip I could download, and the photo my granddaughter Ellie took at my birthday 2 months earlier, where I was reading the label on a jar and laughing. I printed it Not because the court would need it, but because I would. Memory is a tricky seam. You want to stitch it with something real. That evening, I called Marissa. "Come by tomorrow," I said. "We'll look at the transfers together." She sighed. "Mom, I already explained." "Bring the paperwork," I said. "If it's truly for safety, I should know how it works." She agreed, but her voice had that thinness I'd learned to hear when she was a teenager sneaking in after curfew, the sound of a lie trying to stand up straight. When she arrived, she brought takeout instead of paperwork. "You haven't been eating," she said, bustling my kitchen like a nurse in a television drama. "I'll heat this." "I'd rather talk first." She set down the foil pans with a clack. "I told you, it's fine." "Then show me the ledger," I said, keeping my tone mild. "The plan you and I agreed on. The transfers, the dates, the reasons." Her mouth tightened. "I don't have to justify every helpful thing I do." "Helpful things," I said. "Like moving my savings to your account?" She flinched, then recovered. "It's still for you." "Is it?" I reached under the table and lifted a folder, because Pinnacle Capital didn't sound like me, and neither did Salon Supplies Northwest in a month where I had no appointments. "That's not fair," she whispered, color rising in her throat. "The street construction killed my walk-ins. I had to take a merchant cash advance. The interest—" She stopped, eyes flicking sideways, counting what to say and what to hide. "I'll put it back." "When?" "When things settle down." There it was again, the dust in a jar. "No," I said. "We're going to settle them our way." I slid a paper across the table. "This is a revocation of the power of attorney." I signed it this morning in front of a notary. "Ms. Patel will send you her letter. Starting now, you have no authority to move my money." Her face emptied. "You went to a lawyer?" "I did." "You don't trust me." I trusted the girl who slept on the foot of our bed when thunderstorms rattled the windows, I said quietly. "I don't trust the woman who uses my signature as an ATM." She swallowed hard. "That's cruel." "What you did is cruel," I said. "But I'm not interested in arguing about feelings. I'm interested in numbers." She stared at the paper, then at me. You think a letter changes anything?" "It changes everything," I said, "and so will the next steps." She gathered her purse like it might bite and left. I watched through the curtain as she backed out too fast, tires scraping the curb. I did not cry. I put the takeout in the fridge and made toast because sometimes what you need is the simple math of bread and heat. By the end of the week, Ms. Patel's letters were stamped and sent. Mr. Alvarez called to confirm he'd flagged my accounts. "Any attempt by your daughter to transact will trigger a hold and a call to you," he said. "We'll also issue you new numbers." "That's a lot of trouble," I said. "That's what we're for," he answered. I slept that night with my bedroom door open for no reason, except that I could. In the morning, I took Ellie to school and stopped for coffee at the diner where they still remember your order if you tip decently and ask about their grandkids. At 10:30, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I let it buzz itself quiet. It rang again. Then a text from Ms. Patel. "Call me when you're somewhere private." "Marissa filed an emergency petition for guardianship," she said when I called from my car in the church parking lot. "Ex parte hearing this afternoon. She submitted a letter from a clinic. It implies cognitive decline." "My clinic?" "No, a neuro evaluation center downtown." "She didn't take me to any evaluation," I said, heartbeat turning to a drum. "Is the letter signed?" "It bears a name," she said, "but I've never seen a capacity letter that vague." "We'll contest. I'm filing a notice now, asking for a continuance and for your right to appear." "Do I need to take a test?" "You need to show up," she said. "Bring your calendar, your bills, and your cents." I laughed, but it was a sharp sound. "I can do cents." She met me at the courthouse, sharp black jacket, flats that meant business. The judge was younger than my youngest casserole recipe, but his eyes were tired in a way that meant he'd seen too many families turn into knives. "Miss Collins," he said, looking at me from the bench. "Do you understand why you're here?" "I understand my daughter thinks I can't cut my own meat," I said. "But I can." A rustle in the gallery, law clerks shifting, a bailiff's mouth almost smiling. The judge tilted his head. "We'll keep to the legal standards," he said mildly. "Miss Patel?" Miss Patel stood. "Your Honor, my client was not evaluated by the person whose name appears on this letter. We have a letter from her primary care physician, Dr. Yuen, stating no concerns and noting no evaluation was requested. We ask for a continuance to obtain a proper assessment and to present an accounting of recent financial transfers executed by the petitioner under a now revoked power of attorney." Marissa sat 2 rows back, pearl earrings, lips blotted pale. She didn't look at me. Her attorney, a man with a haircut like a geometry proof, rose. "Your Honor, we only want to ensure Miss Collins' safety. She has been confused. She has misplaced items. She signed a power of attorney, then revoked it under outside influence. The letter documents cognitive decline." The judge tapped the letter with his pen. "This document is insufficient for an emergency guardianship," he said. "Ms. Collins will undergo a neutral evaluation within 30 days. In the meantime, no transfers of assets by either party." "Ms. Collins, is that acceptable?" "Yes," I said. "And I'd like my daughter to bring me a list of every transfer she's made with dates and amounts." "We can address discovery at the status hearing," the judge said. "Court is adjourned." Outside, on the courthouse steps, Marissa finally met my eyes. "You brought a lawyer," she said, like I'd brought a wolf. "You brought a lie," I said, "Nima. We're even." She flinched. "You left me no choice." "There are always choices," I said. "You chose badly." Ms. Patel touched my elbow. "Let's not litigate in public." At home, I put the kettle on and sat at the kitchen table without turning on a light. The house felt like it was holding its breath. The phone buzzed. Dr. Yuen. "I heard," she said. "Do you want me to schedule a cognitive assessment to shut this down?" "What if I fail?" I asked, surprising myself. "You won't," she said. "But even if you stumble, we deal with it. That's what the rest of us are for." The test was a week later. A woman with calm hands asked me to draw a clock face, remember 3 words, subtract by 7s. I did them all, then added one of my own. Why would a daughter do this? The evaluator paused. "There are a lot of reasons." "Name one that doesn't taste bitter," I said. She had no answer I wanted to hear. Ms. Patel called. "You scored beautifully. Dr. Yuen will file. We'll ask for sanctions if they continue." I wished for a moment that it hurt less to be right. The next move was mine. Revenge, if you want to call it that, isn't always flames. Sometimes it's a ledger balanced so neatly it takes someone's breath away when they finally see it. I wanted my breath back. I opened a new account at the credit union, under a living trust Ms. Patel set up with a clause as stubborn as I am. The successor trustee was not Marissa. It was a woman I'd met at the senior center, Nadine, a retired school secretary who could sniff out a forged hall pass at 50 paces. We weren't friends exactly, but we shared a smile that said we understood the arithmetic of quiet women. I left a small balance in the old accounts, enough to pay the light bill and look tempting. I set alerts for any login. I asked Mr. Alvarez to send paper statements to a locked box at the post office. Then I did the hardest thing. I waited. Waiting stretches time. You notice how grout discolors, how floorboards remember each footfall. Ellie came over after school to do homework. She's 14 and sees more than people assume. "Mom's mad," she said one afternoon, peeling a clementine at my table. I know. "Is she in trouble?" "Everyone is in some kind of trouble," I said. "The question is whether we're honest about it." She squinted at her math, then at me. "You're doing that face." "What face?" "The one you do when you already know the answer and you're waiting for me to catch up." I laughed. "Finish your homework." A week later, the old account pinged at 2:13 a.m. Someone logged in from a device I didn't recognize. 2 minutes later, a transfer request hung itself on the system's new rules and froze. The bank texted me. Mr. Alvarez called at 9. "We denied it," he said. "You're still the only authorized user." Did it show where it was going? He hesitated. To the salon's vendor account. The memo said bridge. Bridge to where? I asked, though I thought I knew. That afternoon, I parked down the block from the salon and watched through the window as Marissa's hands flew in the air while she talked to a man I didn't recognize. He had the kind of smile that makes you check your wallet. They argued. He left. She sank into a chair as if someone had let the air out of her. I stepped inside. The salon smelled like hair dye and lemon cleaner. "Mom," she said, standing too quickly, "you can't just show up." "Apparently I can," I said. "Is that Pinnacle Capital in a jacket?" She looked toward the door, then back at me. "You don't understand?" "I understand interest rates," I said, "the kind that eat and call it hunger." She closed her eyes. "I took an advance to make payroll when the street was closed." It snowballed. Then Derek, "Your husband," I said, because sometimes you have to say the name of a problem out loud. She nodded. "He thought he could flip a bike and make it back. Then it was a fixer-upper." Then it was a sure thing. Nothing was sure except the repayment schedule. She swallowed. They were going to file a lien on the business. "So you filed one on me?" I said. Her chin lifted. "I was always going to pay it back." "When? After they took my house?" "They wouldn't," she said, but it wobbled. "You looked manufactured a doctor's letter," I said softly. "You moved my money. You filed to take my rights. What do you think happens next?" She folded into herself, hands pressed to her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was wet. "I don't know." "You should," I said, "because I'm going to teach you." The second court date was brisk. Dr. Yuen's letter was neat as a pressed shirt. The evaluator's report concluded I was as capable as any 70-year-old with a to-do list and a stubborn streak. The judge dismissed Marissa's petition with a warning that would ring in my ears later. If there is further misuse of authority, this court will not be patient. Ms. Patel leaned over. "We can file a civil action," she whispered. "Or we can try something else first, a forensic accounting with a settlement demand. If she signs, we keep it mostly in the family. If she refuses, we let the court have it." "Let's try the ledger before the hammer," I said, "for Ellie's sake." We scheduled a meeting in Ms. Patel's conference room, glass walls that reflected everyone's face back at them, a table that could seat 10 grudges. Marissa came alone. She looked smaller without a crowd. Ms. Patel began, "This is not a criminal proceeding. Yet, we are here to review the transfers executed under the now revoked power of attorney and to discuss restitution and safeguards." Marissa nodded once. "Total moved, $78,511, Ms. Patel said, sliding a summary across the table. Of that, $22,000 went to Pinnacle Capital under loan number spelled here, $12,000 to Salon Supplies Northwest, $4,700 to a clinic that, upon verification, has no record of providing services to Ms. Collins, the remainder to personal accounts ending in these digits." Marissa was pale by the time Ms. Patel finished. "I can't pay that," she whispered. "You can," I said, "but you'll do it like you should have paid your other debts, on a schedule that assumes numbers matter." Ms. Patel outlined the settlement, a promissory note secured by a lien on Marissa's share of the small lake cabin my parents left us, the salon equipment, and the car titled in her name. Monthly payments over 7 years, automatic increase if income rose, missed 2 payments, everything accelerated, attend a financial literacy course, no new debt without disclosure. A stipulation that if she defaulted, we'd file and the judge would see every sheet of our ledger. Marissa stared at the paper as if it were written in a language she didn't know. "This will ruin me," she said. "You ruined yourself," I said, then softened. "This will teach you. It might save you. And if I don't sign," Ms. Patel's voice was almost kind, "then we pursue civil and possibly criminal remedies. The court already disapproved of your actions. Your life would be worse than ruined. It would be public." Marissa signed. Her hand shook. Mine didn't. You might think that was the end of the storm. It was only the eye. I put the signed documents in the oak box under the folded flag, behind the fountain pen that had started all of this. I took Ellie for ice cream and let her talk about her biology project until my ears rang with Latin names. I watered the roses in the front yard and cut back the dead wood. I told myself it was enough. Then the HELOC notice came in the mail. Home equity line of credit application, incomplete documentation, the letterhead chirped. The lender was a different brave name, Summit Home. I did not apply for a line of credit. I called the number and listened as a man told me they needed a copy of my driver's license to finish processing. To finish what I never started? Ma'am, I'll be sending your fraud department a letter, I said. And if you don't have one, I'll be sending the Attorney General too. After I hung up, I sat very still, my hands flat on the table. I had made one mistake. I assumed once she signed the settlement, she would stop. People seldom stop at the right lesson. They stop when the consequences teach them. I called Ms. Patel. She answered on the first ring. "We'll file notice with Summit," she said, "and we'll move to enforce the settlement clause about no new debt." But Elaine? Yes? Be careful. If she's desperate, she may try to move faster than paper can catch. I changed the locks. I installed a doorbell camera because my neighbor's son offered to do it for free if I baked him a pie. I changed my passwords using a system no one would guess because it was mine. The street where I learned to ride a bike, the year I quit smoking, the number of stitches I got when a jar shattered in 1979. No one knows your life like you do. The next ping at the bank was not a login. It was a check attempt at the grocery store 3 towns over. The signature looked like mine, drawn by a left hand in the dark. Mr. Alvarez called. "We declined it. It was flagged." "Thank you," I said, meaning it with my bones. 2 days later, Pinnacle called me. "Ms. Collins," a woman said, bright as a bell, "as guarantor on loan 4879, you're past due." "I am not a guarantor," I said. "And if anyone has a document that says I am, it's a forgery." "We have a signed personal guarantee," she said, "dated 2 months ago." "I'd like to see it," I said. "And then I'd like to see your lawyer's face when I show them my revocation and the criminal statute for financial exploitation." "Ma'am." "Send it," I said, and ended the call. It arrived by email, a PDF that had my name where my patient should be. The signature was mine, but not the lines around it. Someone had lifted it from another document and pasted it like a crooked stamp. People think forgery is about the flourish. It isn't. It's about the air around the letters. My air wasn't there. Ms. Patel forwarded it to a man she called our very precise friend, a forensic document examiner with glasses that probably could read minds. He wrote back the next day. "Overlay indicates cut and paste from prior power of attorney page. Ink and pixelation inconsistent, I would testify." We added it to a pile. The pile got heavy. It was Derek who cracked first. He came to my house on a Thursday evening when the sky had turned the color of old milk. He stood on my porch with a bouquet that looked like it had been on sale and the desperate smile of someone rehearsing a confession. "Elaine," he said, "can we talk?" I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "Talk," I said. "I didn't know she did the doctor letter," he blurted. "I told her not to. I told her you'd never forgive us." "And yet here we are." He rubbed his face. "I thought I could fix it. I almost had a deal to flip the house, but the inspector did his job," I said. He swallowed. "The Pinnacle guy, Ron, he said if we didn't pay, he'd come after the business and you. He knew about the power of attorney. I don't know how. I did. Someone had helped him, someone who'd seen my papers when they shouldn't. I thought of the clinic line item. I said nothing. I told Marissa to sign the settlement," he said. "I told her we'd figure it out." "Have you?" He looked away. "We're behind." "Then sell the bike, the fixer-upper, the idea that the next thing saves you," I said. "Pay what you owe. Work at night if you have to. Learn the lesson." He nodded, eyes wet. Will you talk to Marissa?" "She won't listen to me." "I've been talking," I said. "She's the one not hearing." He left with his flowers still in his hand. The storm turned that weekend. Ellie called from the mall. Mom just bought a bracelet, she said in a small voice. She said it was on sale, but she used a card with your name. What store? She told me. I thanked her and told her to get a milkshake and not to worry about grown-up things. Then I called the store and canceled the charge. I called Miss Patel. I called the one person I hadn't yet called because I didn't want this to be that kind of story. I called Adult Protective Services. The woman on the line was steady. She took my information as if it were as simple as a grocery list. We'll open a case, she said. We can coordinate with law enforcement. Is there any danger in your home? Only to anyone who tries the locks, I said. And she laughed, the kind of laugh that says, relief is a brief visitor. On Monday, a detective called. His name was Burns, which felt like a novelist's nudge. He asked to come by. He sat at my table, a large man trying to make himself small. He listened while I laid out the ledger, first the stew, then the pen, then the transfers, then the court, then the attempted HELOC, then the pasted signature. He tapped thought the stack. Most of the time, cases like this are one or two things. This is a lot of things. Does that mean you'll do something? I asked. It means I have to, he said simply. But I'll be honest, prosecutors like neat. Families are messy. I can be very neat when I need to be, I said, and he smiled. He asked permission to call Marissa. He asked permission to subpoena the clinic that issued the letter. He asked if I would wear a recorder if she came to talk about money. Only if you're comfortable, he said. We're a one-party state. I've been recording my life in ledgers for 50 years, I said. I can press a button. When Marissa came, she came not with flowers, but with fury. How could you call APS on your own daughter? She demanded, standing in my doorway like a storm cloud. How could you make it necessary? I asked. You're going to ruin me, she said. You're going to take Ellie from me. That's your fear talking, I said. Do the right thing, and none of that happens. She paced my living room, touching nothing. You think you're better than me? I think I remember who I am, I said. Do you? Her shoulders slumped. I can't make the next payment. Then renegotiate? Sell something? Work more? I'm exhausted, she said, and looked at. So was I when you were 2 and I worked nights at the laundry, I said. Exhaustion is not a defense, it's a condition. She stopped pacing. What do you want from me? Ownership, I said, and a ledger that ends at 0. She stared at me for a long time, then nodded once. Fine. She made the next payment. It scraped like a shovel on frozen ground, but it landed. The one after that, too. She sold the bike. Derek painted houses on weekends. I exhaled in inches. Then the twist came from a direction I hadn't accounted for. The clinic responded to the subpoena. The letter hadn't been forged by Marissa. It had been issued by a physician assistant named Carol, who'd done a brief cognitive screen when Marissa brought me to a walk-in clinic 6 months prior for dizziness. I remembered the day I had stood up too quickly and sat back down. We'd stopped for coffee, and she'd seen the clinic sign and insisted. The screen had been 3 questions in a busy hallway while I still had coffee breath. I'd gotten one wrong. I said Wednesday when it was Thursday because the calendar in the waiting area still showed last month. Carol wrote mild confusion. Consider further evaluation. Marissa had returned later, said I was declining, and requested a letter for safety. Carol obliged, never seeing me again. She'd attached a signature she kept as a scanned image. Detective Burns read the report aloud, his jaw tightening. This isn't fraud the way we thought, he said. It's negligence. It still helps your civil case. It won't give a prosecutor what they want. It gives me what I want, I said. Truth and a target I don't have to love. Ms. Patel sent a letter to the clinic's legal department. A month later, a check arrived with a bland apology. I deposited it in the trust and earmarked it for Ellie's college fund. Marissa never asked about it. Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't. Meanwhile, the lien on the cabin stirred up the one person I'd hoped to avoid, my sister Joan. She called from Arizona with heat in her voice. You put a lien on the cabin? I did, I said. It's collateral. It's family property. So is my savings, I said. She huffed. This is going to make Thanksgiving awkward. Thanksgiving's been awkward since 1983 when you told Grandma her stuffing was dry, I said, and she laughed despite herself. We'll be fine. We were not fine. Joan flew in and walked through the cabin like she was measuring it for a casket. She cried in the kitchen. Why didn't you tell me before? Shame, I said simply. Even old women get it. She hugged me so hard something in my back popped. We'll make it right, she said. You and me. Me and you, I corrected gently. The payments kept landing until winter slid into spring and the dogwood out front made a lace out of itself. Then a letter came from Pinnacle saying the loan had been sold to another firm with a name that sounded like a cliff. The terms were the same on paper but not in spirit. The new collector called at odd hours. He used words like accelerate and confess judgment. He asked questions about me he had no right to ask. I recorded the calls. I sent them to Miss Patel, who filed a complaint with the state regulator. The collector stopped calling. The letters didn't. I put them in a drawer labeled noise. You might think this is where I softened, that the hard edge of me rounded into a lesson everyone could live with. I tried. I invited Marissa to dinner on Sundays. I put extra potatoes in the stew. I listened when she talked about her day. Even when her day was a complaint dressed as a story, I watched Ellie's orchestra concert and squeezed Marissa's hand at the soft parts. Then I found the pawn ticket. It was in Marissa's car, fallen between the seats, the way paper does when fate wants it found. I saw it when she asked me to grab her scarf. It was for my wedding ring, the simple gold band that had left a pale circle on my finger when I took it off to knead dough. The date was 3 weeks prior. The amount was an insult and an emergency. I carried the paper like a live thing into the house and set it on the table. I waited. When she came in, I was still sitting there. What is this? I asked. She looked at the ticket and froze. Mom, you will tell me the truth? I said. She did, haltingly, as if each word cost her. I took it while you were napping. I meant to put it back. I needed cash for payroll. I thought I could buy it back before you noticed. You thought wrong, I said. And you thought I wouldn't count? I'll get it, she said, eyes wide. Tomorrow, I swear. You'll get it now, I said, standing. Get your keys. We drove in silence to a storefront that looked like a bad decision wearing fluorescent lights. The man behind the counter slid the ring across without looking at me. I held it and felt nothing like the girl who'd first worn it. I felt the weight of a choice that had been made without me. At home, I put the ring in the oak box and shut the lid. The next day, I called Miss Patel. We're done, Myth, I said. File it. We filed the civil action. We attached the settlement agreement, the ledger, the recordings, the clinic's check, the pawn ticket, the failed HELOC application, the forged guarantee. We asked for judgment on the note, for an accounting, for costs. Ms. Patel filed a motion for summary judgment with a brief so tidy it felt like a blade. Courtrooms have their own temperatures. That day, ours was cold. Marissa sat with Derek, who stared at his shoes. Ms. Patel spoke first, then the opposing counsel, who tried to make this a family misunderstanding. The judge didn't bite. This is numbers and paper, that he said. Feelings may have put ink on the page, but the math is the math. He granted judgment. He set a date for a sheriff's sale of the salon's excess equipment if the first payment under the judgment wasn't made within 30 days. He signed an order that felt like a door closing and a window opening at the same time. We left in a silence that wasn't empty. Outside, Marissa grabbed my sleeve. Are you happy now? No, I said, but I'm done pretending this is weather we can wait out. You brought the storm. Now you'll learn to build. She made the payment 3 days before the sale, then the next, then she missed one. The sheriff posted a notice that fluttered like a confused flag on the salon window. Derek begged, Marissa begged. I held the line, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because every other line I'd held had been used as a leash. The sale went forward, the dryers went, the extra chairs went, the mirror with the etched flowers went to a woman who gave me a look that said she understood and hated understanding. The salon shrank into something human, not an aspiration with rent attached. Marissa kept working with fewer stations and more quiet. She learned to cut hair without gossiping. She learned to sweep. At home, I learned my own lessons. I made a new will. I set up a trust for Ellie that Marissa could not touch, with a trustee who had no reason to answer to anyone's tears but Ellie's. I wrote letters to be opened later explaining not just what I did, but why. I put copies in the oak box and a duplicate at Miss Patel's office. I slept with the window cracked to hear the trains at night the way I did when I was young, and the future sounded like distance. Ellie came one afternoon with a poster board. "Family History Project," she said. "Can you help?" I pulled down the box of old photos and we spread them on the table like a picnic. She pointed to a picture of me at 20, hair in a scarf, eyes tired and bright. "You look like me," she said. "I am you," I said softly. "Just later." She hesitated. "Am I going to have to choose between you and Mom?" I put my hand over hers. "You have to choose right from wrong," I said. "The rest follows." Spring turned the roses lush. The court set a review date, and I arrived with a ledger that could have been a prayer book. The judge glanced through, nodded. "Progress," he said. "Slow but real." On the courthouse steps, Marissa approached me. "I have a buyer for the cabin share," she said. "It would clear the judgment faster." "Don't sell memory for speed," I said. "Then sign off so I can refinance the house," she snapped, the old heat flaring. "No," I said. "Earn it." She shook her head and walked away, her shoulders tight. I watched her until she turned the corner and then watched the air where she'd been. When I finally moved, it was to the diner for pie because sometimes carrying your own verdict requires sugar. What I did next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a sting or a revelation. It was a class at the Senior Center on Financial Safety led by me and Nadine from the Trust and Mr. Alvarez in his Sunday tie. We called it Counting Back. 10 women came the first week, then 15. We taught them to read their own signatures like they read their grandchildren's faces. We taught them to set limits when love wants what it shouldn't have. We taught them to make oak boxes. A year later, Ellie graduated from middle school and played the cello with a seriousness that made my throat ache. Marissa stood next to me in the bleachers. She didn't talk. I didn't either. We clapped together, which is a kind of prayer. After, she asked if she could come over. We sat at the table where this all began. She traced the seam in the wood with her finger. "I hate the person I was," she said finally. "I hate what you did," I said, "but I'm learning not to hate you." She covered her face with her hands and cried in a way that sounded like the first time you let yourself sleep. When she was done, she straightened. "I got a second job," she said. "Night shift at the grocery store. It's not glamorous." "Glamour is a lie that wants a tip," I said. "Work is work." She smiled a little. "I'm going to make the payments. All of them." "I know," I said. "Because there's one thing you got from me besides brown eyes." "What?" "Stubborn," I said, and we both laughed. You want a moment where I destroyed her? I know. A recorder playing in court while a judge pounded a gavel, a bank manager carrying boxes, a scene. I had those in smaller measure. But what I wanted, what I needed, was not to set a fire. It was to make a map. Revenge, for me, was making sure every road Marissa took led back to the work of fixing what she broke. It was making the numbers add up until there was nothing left to take because everything had finally been given back. In the end, the settlement was paid early. It didn't happen with a windfall. It happened with haircuts and groceries and Derek selling the idea that the next flip would save him. He took a job with benefits. He learned to come home tired without complaining about the color of his tiredness. Marissa learned to save the way you teach a muscle to stop trembling, by using it. We never spoke again about that Sunday stew and the pen and the complete, terrible trust of my hand on a page. We didn't need to. The ledger had become a different thing, a recipe for making a life out of what almost broke it. On the anniversary of the day I signed the papers, I made the stew again. I set the table for 3, and we ate without ceremony. After dishes, Ellie went to the piano and stumbled through a new piece until it sounded like something you could hum. Marissa dried the bowls and looked at the oak box without opening it. "Do you still keep it there?" she asked. "I keep everything there," I said. "Things worth remembering." "Things worth guarding," she nodded. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I didn't do it for you," I said, and then softened. "Not only. I did it for the girl who used to sleep at the foot of my bed when it thundered. I did it for the woman who might yet be brave the right way." She put the dish towel down. "What now?" "Now we live," I said. "We count the right things. We let the wrong ones go." Later, when the house was quiet, I opened the oak box. The ring gleamed next to the fountain pen, next to the folded flag, next to a copy of the settlement stamped "Satisfied." I ran my thumb over the ink and remembered the sharp slide of a signature and how it can be a trap or a key. Mine had been both. The difference was that I learned where it fit. If you want one more lesson, here it is. The people who love you can hurt you because they know where the hinges are. Learn to oil them, learn to brace the door, learn to open it yourself. And if they try to lock it from the outside, remember you taught yourself numbers at the butcher counter. You balanced a baby and a budget. You made a map when they gave you a maze. You don't need anyone to hand you a key. So when I tell you I took back my savings, my rights, my breath, it wasn't a battle so much as a ledger finally brought to zero. It wasn't a fire so much as a light turned on and left on. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. But to understand the long road from a quiet Sunday to this steady Tuesday, you have to remember where we began. A pot of stew, a pen in an oak box, and a woman who still knew how to count.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.